You call yourself the pinnacle of evolution, yet you can't even hold a fork properly, Nyxera muttered under her breath, her luminous teal skin flushed with irritation. Emperor Caoithox's 7 eyes snapped toward her, narrowing in a mix of disbelief and rage. What did you say, slave? Caoithox growled, his voice echoing through the grand hall. The Zorvian court, filled with his advisors and loyalists, went silent. Nyxera smirked, unrepentant. I said, maybe you should evolve opposable thumbs. It might improve your aim. The room erupted in shocked gasps, followed by an uneasy silence. Caoithox rose from his throne, his towering frame casting a shadow over Nyxera. He clenched his claws, his voice venomous. You dare insult me? You were crafted for servitude, and you've proven to be nothing but defective. Nyxera tilted her head, her tail flicking lazily. Defective? Funny, coming from someone who can't even cut his own meat without assistance. With a bellow of rage, Caoithox pointed a claw at her. You are no longer worth the air you breathe. Guards, dispose of this waste. Moments later, Nyxera found herself unceremoniously dumped on Scrap 9, a planet filled with rusting debris and forgotten relics of Zorvian dominance. As the Imperial ship disappeared into the smoky sky, she brushed herself off, muttering, useless? We'll see about that, Caoithox. A loud clanking noise broke her thoughts, followed by a gruff human voice. Well, what do we have here? A bit of shiny trash with an attitude? Nyxera turned sharply to see a scruffy man standing beside a battered hovercart, his grin crooked and unmistakably cocky. His mismatched armor barely covered his wiry frame, and a pair of goggles perched precariously on his forehead. Who are you? She demanded, her voice sharp. Jack Hunter. Scavenger extraordinaire, problem solver, and, when necessary, expert smooth talker. And you are? Not interested, Nyxera shot back, crossing her arms. Jack stepped closer, his grin widening. Feisty. I like that. But let's be honest, you don't look like you belong in this dump. You're too polished. His eyes flicked over her alien features, lingering just a moment too long. Nyxera bristled. If you're done gawking, you can move along. Jack chuckled, leaning against his cart. Relax, princess. I'm just saying, most folks here are broken machines and skeletons. You're a whole mystery package. Now, what's a shiny thing like you doing in a junkyard like this? She hesitated, unsure if this human was friend or foe. Finally, she relented, albeit reluctantly. The Emperor deemed me useless and exiled me here. Jack whistled, clearly amused. Tough crowd. What'd you do? Spill his drink? Step on one of his weird tentacle toes? Nyxera sighed. I questioned his authority. Jack's grin widened further. You sassed the big guy. Now that's a story I'd love to hear. But for now, let's get you out of this mess. This planet doesn't exactly scream 5-star accommodations. And why would you help me? Nyxera asked, suspicion lacing her tone. Jack shrugged, his tone light. Because I'm a sucker for underdogs. And because you look like you've got a hell of a story behind those big glowing eyes. Plus, I could use a co-pilot who doesn't try to kill me. Nyxera raised an eyebrow. And what makes you think I won't? Jack winked. Call it human intuition. Now, are you coming, or are you planning to build a sandcastle out here? Against her better judgment, Nyxera followed him. The hovercart sputtered and groaned as they rode toward his ship, a patched-up freighter that looked like it had seen better centuries. This is your ship? Nyxera asked, incredulous. Jack grinned, patting the hull fondly. She's not much to look at, but she's got heart. Kinda like me. Now, hop aboard and let's get you cleaned up. You smell like a trash compactor. Nyxera rolled her eyes but followed him inside, muttering, humans are insufferable. Jack's voice echoed back from the cockpit. You're gonna love it here, princess. Trust me. By the time we're done, you'll be thanking your lucky stars Caoithox threw you away. Nyxera scoffed but allowed herself a small smile. Maybe this human wasn't entirely useless after all. Inside Jack's ship, Nyxera glared at the dimly lit interior, which was cluttered with wires, half-eaten food packets, and what appeared to be mismatched machine parts. "You call this a ship?" she asked, arms crossed. Jack glanced up from the control panel he was tinkering with, his grin never faltering. "She's got character. And before you judge, remember, I'm the one who saved you from that glorified trash heap out there." Nixera snorted. "Saved is a strong word. You're a scavenger. I'm just another piece of debris you picked up." Jack smirked. "Debris doesn't talk back, sweetheart." Nixera rolled her eyes but said nothing, deciding to explore the ship. The cramped living quarters were no better than the cockpit, metal walls scratched and dented, a makeshift bunk piled with blankets, and a corner stuffed with dubious-looking supplies. "What's this?" Nixera held up a cylindrical device that buzzed faintly when she shook it. Jack turned, his eyebrows waggling. "Careful with that. It's multi-purpose." She frowned. "Multi-purpose? For what?" Jack shrugged, clearly enjoying her confusion. "Depends on how lonely the night gets." Nixera's cheeks flushed an iridescent blue as she dropped the device, glaring at him. "Humans are disgusting. Hey, I didn't invent it. I just appreciate good engineering." Jack leaned back in his chair, hands clasped behind his head. "Speaking of engineering, you ever handle human tech before? Or are Zorvians too fancy for tools that actually work?" Nixera ignored the bait. "Your ship looks like it's held together by sheer desperation. I'm surprised it hasn't fallen apart mid-flight." Jack grinned. "Oh, she's tougher than she looks. Kinda like me. And you, apparently." Nixera tilted her head, her tail flicking. "You know nothing about me." "Not yet," Jack said, standing and walking over to her. "But I've got time. And you've got secrets. Wanna trade?" She hesitated, searching his face for any sign of malice. His grin was infuriatingly sincere, his posture casual but not threatening. Against her better judgment, she relented. "I was created by KOI-Thox's scientists," she began, her voice steady but low. "Engineered to be the perfect servant, obedient, efficient, silent. But they miscalculated. I think for myself. Speak for myself. That was enough for them to consider me a failure." Jack nodded, surprisingly quiet. "Figures. People like KOI-Thox hate anything they can't control." Nixera crossed her arms. "He didn't discard me because I was useless. He was afraid." "Of what?" Jack leaned against the wall, genuinely curious. Nixera hesitated again before answering. "I know things, secrets about Zorvian technology. Weaknesses they've worked hard to keep hidden. KOI-Thox didn't want me destroyed because I might be useful someday. But keeping me around was risky." Jack whistled. "So you're a walking treasure map. No wonder they tossed you on scrap 9. Out of sight, out of mind." "Exactly." Nixera's voice tightened. "And now I'm here, on a human scrap heap, with a human scavenger who thinks he's clever." Jack grinned, clearly unfazed. "I am clever. And lucky. I mean, I just found the galaxy's most wanted secret weapon sitting in a pile of junk. That's a good day for me." Nixera's tail lashed. "I'm not a weapon." Jack held up his hands in mock surrender. "Relax, princess. It's a compliment. You've got the brains, the attitude, and now you've got me. Trust me, KOI-Thox is gonna regret tossing you out." Nixera eyed him skeptically. "And why would you help me? What do you get out of this?" Jack's grin softened, just a bit. "Look, I'm not exactly the hero type. But if sticking it to a galactic tyrant means I get to be the underdog who wins, I'm in. Besides, you're interesting. And I'm not just talking about the tail." Nixera's gaze narrowed. "You're impossible." "True." Jack clapped his hands together. "Now, let's talk about that Zorvian tech you mentioned. Weaknesses, secrets, anything that might give us an edge if KOI-Thox decides to come looking for you." "You're assuming I'll tell you anything," Nixera said coolly. Jack winked. "Oh, you will. I've got ways of getting people to talk." Nixera glared at him, but the hint of a smirk tugged at her lips. "I doubt that." Challenge accepted. Jack turned back to the cockpit. "Buckle up, princess. This is gonna be fun." She watched him go, shaking her head. Humans were insufferable. But maybe, just maybe, this one was useful. Jack leaned against the ship's dashboard, flicking switches and muttering to himself. The hum of the engines was accompanied by occasional sputters, which did little to inspire confidence in Nyxera as she sat nearby, arms crossed, watching him with thinly veiled skepticism. "You do know what you're doing, right?" she asked. Jack shot her a cocky grin. "I've made it this far without blowing myself up. That counts for something." "Barely," Nyxera muttered, her glowing eyes narrowing as another sputter shook the ship. "Relax," Jack said, adjusting a lever with an unnecessary flourish. "She just needs a little TLC. Kinda like you." Nyxera's tail flicked, and she leaned forward. "Excuse me?" Jack turned, unbothered by the dangerous edge in her voice. "Don't get me wrong. You're tough. But you've got that edge. Like someone who's spent too much time trying to survive and not enough time actually living." Nyxera frowned. "Living? What exactly does that mean to you? Drinking your body weight in cheap liquor and pilfering junk from dead planets?" "Hey, don't knock it till you try it," Jack said, smirking. "But seriously, living means doing something for yourself for once. Not for KRY-thox, not for some greater purpose. Just for you." Nyxera stared at him for a moment, then scoffed. "Humans and their clichés. You think you can solve everything with some feel-good pep talk and a ridiculous grin?" Jack shrugged. "Works more often than you'd think. Besides, if you're stuck with me, you might as well learn to appreciate my charm." Nyxera snorted. "Charm? Is that what you call your endless stream of pointless jokes and innuendos?" "Pointless?" Jack feigned offense. "I'll have you know my humor has gotten me out of more tight spots than I can count." "Unsurprising, considering how many tight spots you seem to land yourself in," Nyxera retorted. Jack chuckled, clearly enjoying her barbs. "See? You're catching on. Next thing you know, you'll be cracking jokes and loosening up." Nyxera raised an eyebrow. "I highly doubt that." "Bet you will," Jack said, turning back to the controls. "In fact, I'll make it my personal mission to get you to laugh. And not that sarcastic little chuckle you do when you think I'm being ridiculous. A real laugh." Nyxera rolled her eyes. "If that's your mission, I suggest you prepare for failure." Jack grinned over his shoulder. Challenge accepted. The ship shuddered as it exited hyperspace, the view outside shifting to reveal a bustling spaceport orbiting a lush green planet. Nyxera studied the sight, her expression unreadable. "Welcome to Haven Station," Jack announced, gesturing grandly. "The galaxy's #1 destination for people who don't ask too many questions." Nyxera glanced at him. "And what, exactly, are we doing here?" "Supplies, repairs, maybe a drink or two if you're feeling adventurous," Jack replied. "Plus, I've got a contact here who might be able to help us with your situation." "My situation?" "Your whole I know secrets that could topple an empire thing," Jack said, spinning his chair around to face her. "You might not trust me yet, but I've got friends who hate KRY-thox almost as much as you do. If we play our cards right, we might be able to make use of that big brain of yours." Nyxera's expression hardened. "I'm not some tool for you to use." "Never said you were," Jack replied, his tone unusually serious. "I'm just saying, you don't have to do this alone. And if we can give KRY-thox a good kick where it hurts in the process, even better." She studied him, searching for any sign of deception. To her surprise, she found none. "Fine," she said at last. "But don't expect me to trust your so-called friends right away." "Fair enough," Jack said, standing and stretching. "Now, let's get moving. And try not to glare at everyone we meet. Not everyone's out to get you, you know." Nyxera followed him reluctantly, muttering, "I'll believe that when I see it." Jack grinned, leading the way. "Stick with me, princess. I'll show you the human way of doing things." Nyxera sighed, already regretting her decision to leave Scrap 9. But as she stepped off the ship and into the chaos of Haven Station, she couldn't deny a spark of curiosity. Maybe, just maybe, this human knew what he was doing. Jack navigated through the crowded corridors of Haven Station with the kind of casual confidence that only came from years of dealing with dubious characters. Nyxera followed closely, her sharp eyes scanning every corner for potential threats. She didn't trust the chaotic mix of species, all bartering, arguing, and moving with purpose through the bustling market. "Does everyone here smell like engine grease and desperation?" she asked, her nose wrinkling slightly. "Only on Tuesdays," Jack replied with a grin. "Come on, lighten up. You'll love it here. The people are friendly-ish and the drinks are strong. What's not to like?" Nixera shot him a skeptical look. "I suppose you think this is your idea of culture." "Hey, culture's subjective," Jack said, stopping at a stall selling what looked like alien electronics. "Now, keep your eyes open for anything that looks useful. And try not to touch anything unless you're ready to haggle." Nixera glanced at a strange contraption that emitted a faint hum and seemed to change colors under the fluorescent lights. "What even is this?" The stall owner, a squat alien with 3 eyes and a mouth full of sharp teeth, perked up. "That, my dear, is a genuine multiphase spectral calibrator. Very rare. Very expensive." Nixera tilted her head. "And what does it do?" The alien hesitated, its eyes darting nervously. "Well, it, calibrates spectrums. Multiphase ones." Jack snorted. Translation: "It's useless junk. Nice try, buddy, but we're not tourists." The alien hissed in frustration, muttering something under its breath as Jack tugged Nixera away from the stall. "Lesson number 1, Jack said. If they can't explain what it does in 10 seconds, it's a scam." "Good to know," Nixera said dryly. "How do you know so much about scams?" "Experience," Jack replied, flashing a grin. "I've run a few myself." Nixera frowned. "Remind me again why I'm trusting you." "Because I'm charming, resourceful, and the only one crazy enough to help you," Jack said, stopping in front of a dimly lit bar. "Speaking of which, time to meet my contact. Stay close, and try not to scare anyone." Nixera followed him inside, her senses immediately on high alert. The bar was loud and crowded, filled with beings of every shape and size. The air was thick with smoke and the scent of something vaguely alcoholic. "Ah, there's my guy," Jack said, spotting a tall, lanky alien with pale blue skin and elongated fingers seated at a corner table. "Rick. Long time no see." Rick looked up, his wide, black eyes narrowing as Jack approached. "Hunter. You've got a lot of nerve showing your face here." Jack held up his hands innocently. "Come on, Rick. That thing with the cargo shipment was years ago. Water under the bridge, right?" Rick's gaze shifted to Nixera, his expression unreadable. "And who's your friend?" Nixera stepped forward, her posture tense. "I'm not his friend." Jack smirked. "She says that now, but she'll come around. Anyway, Rick, we're here on business. Need some intel, and you're the guy to get it." Rick leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled. "Intel doesn't come cheap. When does it ever?" Jack said, sliding into the seat across from him. "But this time, it's worth your while. We're talking about information that could seriously hurt Sci-Fi. Rick's interest was piqued, though he tried to hide it. "You'd better not be wasting my time." Jack gestured to Nixera. "She's the real deal. Used to be one of Sci-Fi's top experiments until they tossed her out. She knows things. Big things." Nixera bristled. "I'm not a bargaining chip." Jack shot her a quick glance. "Relax, princess. This is how the game is played." Rick studied Nixera for a long moment before speaking. "What kind of information are we talking about?" Nixera hesitated, then finally spoke. Sci-Fi's empire isn't as invincible as they want everyone to believe. Their tech has flaws. Weak points. And I know where to find them." Rick leaned forward, his expression serious. "If that's true, you're sitting on a goldmine. But it also makes you a target. Sci-Fi won't let you walk away with that kind of knowledge." "Good thing I've got Jack to protect me," Nixera said, her tone laced with sarcasm. Jack grinned. "Damn right. So, Rick, are you in or out?" Rick considered them both, then nodded. "I'm in. But if this goes sideways, I'm not taking the fall for you." "Wouldn't dream of it," Jack said, standing and clapping Rick on the shoulder. "Now let's get to work." Nixera followed Jack out of the bar, her mind racing. She didn't fully trust Rick or Jack, for that matter, but she had to admit, they were her best shot at taking down Kaowithox. For better or worse, she was all in. Rick led Jack and Nixera through the winding alleys of Haven Station's lower levels, where the air smelled of rust and unwashed bodies, and the dim lighting flickered ominously. Nixera kept her senses sharp, her tail twitching slightly as they moved. The deeper they went, the more she questioned her decision to trust either of them. Your idea of a safe meeting spot is questionable, Nixera muttered, her eyes scanning the shadows. Rick didn't look back. The Zorvian Dominion has ears everywhere. Down here, the only things listening are rats, and even they can't be trusted. Jack chuckled. He's not wrong. Space rats are notorious snitches. Nixera ignored him, focusing instead on Rick, who finally stopped in front of a heavy steel door. He rapped on it in a specific pattern, and a small slot slid open, revealing a pair of glowing green eyes. Rick, the voice on the other side rasped. You better not be bringing trouble. Relax, Catra. It's business, Rick replied. The slot closed, and after a moment, the door creaked open. They stepped inside a dimly lit room filled with monitors and various alien tech. A tall, sinewy alien with mottled grey skin and sharp claws stood behind a desk cluttered with wires and tools. This better be worth my time, Catra said, glaring at Rick before shifting her gaze to Jack and Nixera. Her eyes lingered on Nixera, narrowing. You brought me a Zorvian experiment. Former experiment, Nixera corrected, her tone icy. Jack stepped forward, flashing his trademark grin. She's more than that, Catra. She's got intel that could bring Kaowithox to his knees. Catra snorted. Big words for a scavenger. What makes you think I care? Because you hate Kaowithox as much as we do, Jack said, leaning casually against the desk. And because if this pans out, you'll be the one who helped make it happen. Catra's gaze flicked back to Nixera. What kind of intel are we talking about? Nixera hesitated, then spoke. The Zorvian Dominion's primary power cores, planetary ones, ship-based ones, they all rely on a singular energy lattice. It's powerful, but unstable. I know how to disrupt it. Catra's eyes widened slightly before narrowing again. That's a bold claim. You better have proof. Nixera held her ground. The proof is in my knowledge. I was part of the team that developed the lattice. Kaowithox discarded me when I started asking questions about its flaws. He didn't think I'd survive long enough to use what I know. Catra leaned back, her sharp claws tapping the desk. If this is true, you're worth more dead than alive to the Dominion. Good thing she's got me, Jack interjected. Catra rolled her eyes. And what are you planning to do with this information, scavenger? Blow up a couple of ships and call it a day? Jack's grin widened. I was thinking bigger. Like, galaxy-shaking bigger. Nixera cut in, her voice firm. I want more than revenge. I want to end the Dominion's stranglehold on the galaxy. But I can't do it alone. Catra studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Fine. I'll help. But if you're lying, or if this plan blows up in our faces, literally, I'm not taking the fall. Jack clapped his hands. That's the spirit. Now, what's our next move? Catra gestured to the monitors, which displayed various schematics and data streams. We'll need to create a diversion. Something big enough to draw attention away from our real target. There's a Zorvian patrol fleet docked nearby. Take them out, and it'll buy us the time we need. Nixera frowned. Won't that just alert Kaowithox to our presence? Not if we make it look like an accident, Catra said, a sly smile creeping onto her face. Jack raised an eyebrow. I like the way you think. Catra began typing on a console, pulling up schematics of the docked fleet. There's a fuel depot adjacent to the fleet. It's volatile, but stable if left alone. If we overload the safety systems remotely, it'll look like a maintenance failure. Nixera crossed her arms. And you're sure you can do this without leaving a trail back to us? Catra smirked. You're not the only one who knows how to work with Zorvian tech. Jack clapped his hands together. Looks like we've got ourselves a plan. Let's get to work. As Catra began setting up the diversion, Nixera found herself watching Jack, her mind swirling with doubts and questions. She still didn't fully trust him or anyone, for that matter, but for the first time in years, she felt something resembling hope. Jack caught her staring and flashed a grin. "You're gonna love this. Humans are great at causing chaos." Nyxera rolled her eyes. "I'm sure you are. Stick around, princess. I'll show you how it's done." Despite herself, Nyxera couldn't help but smirk. Maybe, just maybe, Jack Hunter wasn't entirely useless after all.